Could lockdown last until summer, just as so many of us are pinning hopes on making plans? Glastonbury's cancelled again. Northern Ireland just stretched lockdown by another 4 weeks, and the Prime Minister himself won't rule it out.
I think it's too early to say when we'll be able to lift some of the restrictions.
We know the government will take a view by mid-February in England, when the most vulnerable should have been vaccinated. But it's becoming increasingly clear there may be no quick move to edge us back to normality. Also on News at 10 tonight. Reality bites for President Biden with the biggest in-tray in living memory. Inside the secure lab where they're trying to keep a step ahead of the virus variants, Tom gets exclusive access. They've kept going in lockdown, but for how much longer? More than 30,000 nursery staff test positive since December.
We've been told it's safe, but that's a lie. Because categorically people are getting ill.
And as he takes on a black and white classic, Gary Oldman's rosy view of launching a movie on TV.
It takes the pressure off that thing of the opening weekend. You know, your movie's got to make this much or you sink.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. When the virus arrived in Britain, we thought the first lockdown would last 3 weeks, then that things would be normal by the summer, then in time for Christmas, and then Easter. Well, today the Prime Minister was rather more cautious. No boosterism now. He couldn't say whether the lockdown would still be in place by this summer or not. His Home Secretary, Priti Patel, made the same point when asked about booking summer holidays. It's too early to say, she said. The organisers of Glastonbury aren't waiting to find out. This summer's festival is off, and Northern Ireland is extending its lockdown. As for enforcing the rules in England, Ms Patel announced a new fine, £800 for everyone at a house party of more than 15 people.
Never mind Christmas, but has Easter just been cancelled, and possibly even the summer? Today the government was talking down the chances of lifting lockdown restrictions anytime soon.
Are we looking at summer rather than spring?
I think it's too early to say when we'll be able to lift some of the restrictions. We're seeing the contagiousness of the new variant that we saw arrive just before Christmas. There's no doubt it does spread very fast indeed.
So what about those thinking of booking summer holidays? The Home Secretary slapped that down.
It is far too early in terms of to speculate around restrictions such as the point you've just made, should people be booking a holiday? You know, we are unquestionably, and I emphasise this, think about the numbers that we have spoken about already. We have thousands of people still in hospital, pressures on the NHS. The advice is very clear. We are in a lockdown. The public should be staying at home.
Illegal parties would, she said, incur bigger fines, while a leading doctor said we should imagine we were still at war.
Breaking the rules in the way that's been described today is like switching on a light in the middle of a blackout in the Blitz. It doesn't just put you at risk in your house, it puts your whole street and the whole of your community at risk.
But could vaccination offer more hope of a swift end to the pandemic? 5 million doses have now been administered, including at this clinic at a mosque in Birmingham. Quite a milestone, but there are big regional variations. The over 80s have been among the first in line. In the northeast of England and Yorkshire, around 67% have had their first jab. The figure is lower in the northwest, the Midlands and the south, while in the east of England and London, only around half of this age group have had at least one dose. A scientist advising the government on the pandemic says it's winter, not any delay in the rollout, that's the major problem. The virus spreading as so many people are indoors. Could summer then rescue us and better weather?
With a combination of vaccinating of the elderly and most susceptible, and the onset of spring, better weather, more open windows, that will see a change in the pattern of the outbreak and buy us time to vaccinate the rest of the population.
But with one devolved nation, Northern Ireland, tonight extending its lockdown by another 4 weeks, the signs are that for everyone in the United Kingdom, it's going to be a long, long winter. Libby Vina, News at 10.
Well, as Lou was saying, they're lifting lockdown restrictions is dependent on the vaccines, and what scientists are now trying to find out is whether the current ones work against the new and more infectious strains. ITV News has had a first glimpse of them being studied in an ultra-high containment lab in Glasgow, one of just a handful in the country analysing the new strains. The research there suggests vaccines will work against the UK variant, but there's pessimism about those circulating in South Africa and Brazil, with scientists telling us it's almost inevitable we will need new vaccines to tackle them.
In a laboratory like this one, there are no half measures.
Let me talk you through the PPE process.
Not just one set of overshoes, but two. Disposable overalls, one pair of gloves under it, and another over the top. This is a level 3 containment lab, airlocked and ultra clean. One of only a handful of labs in the country working with the new, more infectious variants of the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
So here we are just looking at cells that were not infected.
Under the microscope, just look at how healthy cells, like those in our lungs, are destroyed by the infection. Oh my goodness.
Here we can see that most of the cells are dying because of the infection of SARS-2.
It's painstaking research, but there's a sense of urgency too. We need to understand why these viruses are more infectious, and more immediately, will our vaccines work against them?
And that's exactly what they're doing in this high containment lab. These experiments are essential if we're going to understand what the viruses are capable of doing outside the laboratory.
Can they be transmitted better? Can they have a different clinical outcome? And more importantly, given this phase, can they escape the current vaccination rollout?
Here in Glasgow, they're currently looking at the new UK variant. Early indications are that while it might be able to escape the immune system response produced by our vaccines, it's unlikely to prevent them from working altogether. There's far more concern about new variants circulating in Brazil and South Africa, and here's why. This is the spike protein on the surface of the virus that helps it invade cells. The UK variant has a mutation here, thought to enhance that ability. But the other two strains have two additional mutations that may help them avoid the immune system.
So we have this alarming data, and it's certainly alarming, but we don't have all the parts of the jigsaw puzzle to be able to translate that into what it means for reinfection, which is the other major issue, and what it means for vaccines.
Professor Moore has just completed lab experiments suggesting the variant in South Africa can entirely escape the immune response in some people previously infected with COVID. But only data from trials like this one in Soweto will confirm whether vaccines will work or not.
Do you think it's inevitable that we're going to end up making new vaccines to more specifically target these new variants that are emerging?
I think it's as close to inevitable as, yes, I think it's very likely. Having said that though, the data that we don't have yet are really from the vaccine trials, and that's the most reliable data that we have. So if we see an uptick in infections with these new variant strains in people who've been vaccinated, that would be the final answer on that question.
Those designing new vaccines need research like this to define what alternatives should look like. While they don't know everything yet, they're closing in on the answers. Tom Clark, News at 10, Glasgow.
Well, as the scientists do that incredible work on the vaccines, the latest virus death and case numbers reported today were down slightly on yesterday. That doesn't mean there is yet any let-up in the pressures on the hospitals, though. This week, our health editor, Emily Morgan, has been filing reports from those at the limits of their capacity or beyond. For tonight, she's been to two in Hull, to the Royal Infirmary, and also to Castle Hill, where the first UK patients to be hospitalised were treated last January.
On January the 28th, 2020, Castle Hill Hospital in Hull got a phone call.
I'm Nick Eason, and I assessed one of the first coronavirus patients in the UK. This is the room I walked into that first night.
Dr. Esom and the team here were told 3 people in York had suspected coronavirus. They got up and left a party immediately.
So this is where they were?
Exactly. So I walked in wearing my full PPE and there was a gentleman standing here and I could see immediately that he was going to be okay. And then
That must have been a relief.
Assessment. It was a huge relief, yes.
Yeah.
They swabbed the family from China and everyone waited.
I'm Anna Samson. I was woken up by my colleague at 11 and was told to come to hospital immediately. A teleconference.
The following night, Dr. Samson was given the news 2 of them had tested positive. It was information that changed everything.
I was feeling like I was in a movie. It was strange. There were these 3 people in next door who were sleeping, who were at that point still unaware. I mean, we did know that the fact that these patients were here meant that there were probably more patients and that it might be getting bigger. But we still thought we might be able to contain this.
Little did doctors know that 1 year on, this whole infectious disease ward would be full. In fact, 15 wards have now been taken over with COVID patients. And in intensive care, many, many patients who are extremely sick, with more coming in every day.
I'm feeling very, very poorly.
I'm Yolanda Johnson, and I don't know how much more of this we can take.
The number of deaths during the second wave has hit staff like nothing before.
Just very, very tired and disheartened at the fact that we're losing so many patients all the time. So,
that's not easy.
No, it's not. Not for anybody.
Well done. Well done.
I'm Patrick Lilly. I'm one of the principal investigators for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine trial, which hopefully will help get us out of this pandemic. We will move him across because I think he should come here ASAP.
Dr. Lilly also treated the first patients. Even he can't believe how much has been achieved in 12 months.
Hopefully we will get to the stage where, yes, having your coronavirus vaccine is as routine as having your flu vaccine, and it becomes like that. We're not there yet, and I think it will be a little bit of time before we get there, but that I think is probably the best we can hope for.
While we were filming, Linda was clapped out of Hull's infectious disease ward, a reminder perhaps of just how much this virus is still affecting us all. Emily Morgan, News at 10 at Castle Hill Hospital in Hull.
Today, one of the Biden administration now, and in his first 24 hours, the new president has already done more than the old one did to boost America's response to the coronavirus crisis. He signed 10 executive orders, which include plans to increase vaccinations and testing and the use of face coverings. With, unsurprisingly, after yesterday, a bit of a croaky voice, he did say, "We didn't get into this mess overnight and it will take months to turn this around." But he declared to a nation waiting for action, "Let me be clear, help is on the way."
America's beleaguered scientists have new allies.
Hey, Doctor, how are you?
Mr. President, how are you?
You're going to be doing a lot of talking for the next while.
Nice to see you.
And finally, they have a commander-in-chief who understands the challenge they face.
400,000 Americans have died. That's more than have died in all of World War II. 400,000. This is a wartime undertaking. This executive order I'm signing is strengthening the supply chain.
With the swipe of his pen, the new president gave his name to the United States' effort to properly tackle the coronavirus pandemic.
This next one is keeping workers safe.
The pile of executive orders a measure of just how much needs to be done, from masking to vaccinating to the quarantining of visitors. And for the first time, the science will lead the fight.
We will make sure that scientists and public health experts will speak directly to you. That's why you're going to be hearing a lot more from Dr. Fauci again. Not from the president, but from the real, genuine experts and scientists. We're going to make sure they work free from political interference and they make decisions strictly based on science and health care alone, Science and health alone, not what the political consequences are.
And what a change indeed, not just word. COVID prevention measures now in place in the White House and the chief scientist speaking freely.
The idea that you can get up here and talk about what you know, what the evidence, what the science is, and know that's it. Let the science speak. It is somewhat of a liberating feeling.
After 4 years, this is a moment for liberal America to exhale. But as with the inauguration itself, in a COVID-friendly way.
Here comes the sun.
The whole celebration done without crowds, but with acknowledgement of the past and the future.
We not only see what has been, we see what can be. We shoot for the moon.
Good evening, America.
And in a time of division, unity and support from those who know the pressures of office.
Well, I think the fact that the three of us are standing here talking about a peaceful transfer of power speaks to the institutional integrity of our country.
They are aspirational words, but the United States is far from united. Healing its sickness and unifying its citizens will be the greatest challenge for the new administration.
Emma, it's been quite 24 hours, hasn't it? And the new president clearly intends to take a completely new direction with COVID, and he knows the clock is ticking on this.
Yes, and he also knows that he will be very harshly judged on this. 4,000 people died in this country yesterday as he was being inaugurated. For those who fear coronavirus, he will be judged on the figures. And he knows that that time is coming towards him very quickly because people are extremely afraid of what's happening in this country because of the virus. But he will also be judged by those who question whether or not coronavirus really is a threat. And that is why he's going to leave it to the science, because the figures do not lie. He's already put the American people on notice. By this time next month, 500,000 people may have lost their lives in this pandemic in this country. And he has warned that there is a very dark winter ahead.
Emma, thank you very much indeed. Now, in the struggle to protect homes and possessions from floodwater in northern England, some battles have been won with defences holding, but many have been lost. Evacuations that began last night have continued during the day. 169 flood warnings are still in place, with a severe one for part of Cheshire.
Northwich in Cheshire, sandwiched between two rivers, is vulnerable to flooding. But this time, while the flood defences held, the underground drainage system was overwhelmed by the huge volumes of rainwater. Dozens of elderly residents had to be rescued from a retirement home. For the most vulnerable in society, after months of fear over COVID, now a new, more urgent threat.
Just a bit frightened, inward we, not to anybody else.
Well, the water is about that far from coming through my door, so hopefully it won't.
This is the last thing you needed after the year we've all had.
Exactly.
But 95-year-old Joy Potts is managing to stay positive.
I thank you. I'm enjoying it. 2 months on one on each arm.
As if people and businesses hadn't been through enough this year, now this. And to make matters worse, ever since flood defences were installed in this town a few years ago, many haven't even been able to get insurance cover. Meanwhile, in Manchester, house fronts crashed onto the street after a sewer collapsed, creating a sinkhole. It's thought the heavy rain might have played a part.
It's so frightening. I was so scared because I've never seen soil before. So even up to now, I'm so scared, so I can't just stay there.
If anyone can help, please, this is live in Goshen Park.
And these dramatic pictures show a street in Neath in Wales where properties have been evacuated. In Lymm in Cheshire, Gabrielle's home was inundated.
And cried because he was just coming in the back door and it's just a lot. My living room, it's thigh high and it's dirty and it's smelly and everything. We try to save as much as we can, but it's just a lot.
The Prime Minister made a visit to Didsbury in Manchester, where thousands were told to leave their homes as the river came within centimetres of disaster. Tonight, though, many are still at risk, like here on the River Dee, the water at its highest ever recorded level. So for now, the threat still looms. Rebecca Barry, News at 10, Cheshire.
When the Glastonbury Music Festival was cancelled in March last year, in the week before lockdown, it became clear, if it wasn't already, just how disrupted the summer was going to be. Well, now it has been cancelled for this summer as well. The organisers said they'd been moving heaven and earth to try to make it happen, but they simply hadn't been able to. People who'd already had their 2020 tickets rolled over to this year will be able to roll them over again to next year.
So much more than a music event. To millions, Glastonbury represents summer and fun. But the biggest festival in the world's been cancelled for the second year running.
Like many other people, kind of feel like life's in black and white at the moment, lacking a bit of technicolor and escapism and hedonism. So I was disappointed, but I suppose everything's relative, and given just how many people have died up to this point, I suppose it's hardly a surprise.
With the vaccines, Justin Hayward-Young played at Glastonbury in 2019. The idea that it's been silenced for another year means more misery for everyone in his profession.
It's incredibly frustrating. Like I say, that I do, that I think the industry as a whole sometimes feels perhaps that we've been relegated to entertainment or a luxury.
Last year, Paul McCartney was due to headline. He's already said he thinks it's too risky to stage this summer. And today, the organisers said, in spite of our efforts to move heaven and earth, it has become clear that we simply will not be able to make the festival happen this year. We are so sorry to let you all down. It's not just Glastonbury. There are hundreds of festivals in Britain worth £1.7 billion. The government's being urged to offer insurance so artists can be booked and tickets sold.
In Germany, the government is acting to back up with insurance the festivals in that country, and as a result, they are going to take the business that we would have had.
Do you think there is any chance that we'll get a festival season this year?
The average cut-off date, whether they're going to go ahead or not, is the end of March. So that is rapidly approaching. It is a window that is closing and requires immediate action, but there is certainly still time.
A government spokesman said bringing 200,000 people together in a few months' time was unlikely. But to many, it will feel that summer is about to be cancelled again. Juliet Bremner, News at 10.
For many parents of very young children, nurseries staying open has been a godsend, but it has been very difficult for nurseries to keep going. A survey by the Early Years Alliance found nearly half of nursery and preschool staff don't feel safe at work, while almost 2/3 of nurseries and preschools said there is a chance they may soon have to close temporarily because of staff shortages. It's estimated that around 31,000 nursery and preschool staff have tested positive for COVID-19 just since the start of December.
That coronavirus spares the very young is one of the rare reliefs this pandemic provides, but it isn't so sparing of those that care for them.
I'm going to check your temperature. Remember it ready?
While COVID cases among children remains extremely low, for nursery staff, rates are rising fast, with support to keep them safe slow in coming. This nursery in Kent has received no COVID tests, no PPE, no extra financial help, despite being told by the government to stay open to all children.
We've been told it's safe, but that's a lie. Because categorically people are getting ill and people are going to hospital. So for us, we feel a little bit like, one, we've been forgotten, and two, we've been lied to.
COVID outbreaks among staff here have forced the nursery to close 3 times. Carolyn has 2 sons. One is shielding, the other has special educational needs, but she spends the days looking after other people's.
Most of us are scared. I've definitely had my moments where I've just sat in bed and cried, but I also know all the girls have. And being someone that you've got to be a motivator as well for children. You've got to motivate these children, you've got to motivate the parents and show them that we're safe and we're happy to have them back. But at the same time, you feel conflicted to be here yourself.
We've got these tests. They're a rapid flow test.
You bought those yourself?
We bought these ourselves.
Jo is doing her best to keep her staff safe. But unlike schools, as a privately run nursery, they do not have access to the government's testing programme. Given you're open and the government have told you to be open, would you expect the government to provide some tests for you?
We would definitely expect them to provide in-house testing.
And charitable nurseries face the same problem. This East London nursery is struggling to stay open. They've had 3 members of staff hospitalised with COVID since last Friday. Those that remain accept the risks of looking after these children.
Are you going to let the child keep crying? You have to hug the child. So in that case, there's no social distancing.
But they cannot accept those risks not being recognised.
We must have tests to continue to be able to provide this service. Every day is a challenge, and that challenge will only increase. We must not be forgotten and absolutely considered for frequent testing and a vaccination.
The government says it's vital that early years settings stay open and insists children are unlikely to play a driving role in COVID transmission. But as staff sickness rises, so too does the fear and the frustration that their stories are not being heard. Daniel Hewitt, News at 10.
In sport, Liverpool's 68-game unbeaten home run has been ended tonight by Burnley. And finally, there is no doubt that the film industry, like most forms of entertainment, has been badly hit by everyone being stuck at home. But it has been adapting. Change that may have been coming anyway has gone into overdrive, namely internet streaming. The actor Gary Oldman's latest film was made for the big screen, but is now being released online. He sees the pros and cons, but he says it is vital to keep cinemas open.
Please call me Mank. Mank.
Mank. Mank. Mank. This is Herman Mankiewicz, but we're to call him Mank.
Shot in black and white, set in the 30s, it very much looks like old Hollywood. Except Mank, about the making of Citizen Kane, was created in this new era of filmmaking, brought to the screen by the streaming giant Netflix. And for its British Oscar-winning star, the changes are both good and bad.
With the new streaming system, now they don't release, they drop, which I don't like that expression, but you know, it drops. It takes the pressure off that thing of the opening weekend. You know, your movie's got to make this much or you sink.
Some would argue a film like Mank, which is a big cinematic epic, should be seen on a big cinema screen.
Yeah, I'm sad that most people will get to see it on a television.
You owe me, Herman.
Oldman plays Herman J. Mankiewicz, who co-wrote Citizen Kane with Orson Welles. Mank was shown for a short time in cinemas before Christmas, and the actor says he couldn't resist.
I said, should we go and see Mank in the cinema on the big screen? It was obviously the pandemic was, you know, there weren't many people in the cinema, but it was a real treat to see it 40 feet across.
How different the film world looked when Oldman won his Oscar in 2018. This year, award ceremonies are delayed, and there are fears that cinemas currently closed will struggle to reopen.
There's so many people now coming up, so many young people coming up where their whole viewing experience is on these little machines. Let's try and keep these movie houses open.
Some major films, like Christopher Nolan's Tenet, were released into cinemas last year. The new James Bond film is being held back until April this year.
With Chris releasing Tenet the way he did, it's a movie that you want to see. It's an event, and I would imagine it's the same for Bond. They're being optimistic about where this whole pandemic is heading.
Gary Oldman may be tipped for award success for Mank, a tribute to cinema's past, but he's not alone in uncertainty over its future. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
And that is all for tonight from all of us on the small screen on News at 10 here and working from home. Good night. We'll see you tomorrow.